Good morning. I would like to call this meeting to order. Katie, please call roll.
Mary Ellen Early. Here. Mark Goldstein.
Here.
Dr. Maheda. Sam Kabushian. Michael Terry. Cheryl Williams. Vice President Hernandez.
Here.
And President Guzman.
Thank you. A quorum is present, and President Guzman will be here shortly, so in the meantime, I'll be filling in for him as Vice President. I want to ask everyone to please turn off your cell phones to silent. This is an official business meeting of the Respiratory Care Board. You may notice board members accessing their laptops, phones, and other devices during the meeting. They are using the devices solely to access board meeting materials that are in electronic format. Public comment will be allowed on each agenda item, as each item is taken up by the board during the meeting. Under the Open Meeting Act, the board may not take any action on items raised by public comment that are not on the agenda, other than to decide whether to schedule that item for a future meeting. If you would like to provide a comment, it would be appreciated, though not required, if you would provide your name and the organization you represent, if applicable, prior to speaking. To allow the board sufficient time to conduct its scheduled business, public comment may be limited. The board welcomes public comment on any item on the agenda, and it is the board's intent to ask for public comment prior to the board taking action on any agenda item. If for some reason I forget to ask for public comment on an agenda item and you wish to speak on that item, please let the moderator know and you will be recognized. Also, with the new amendment to our continuing education regulations, this is officially the first board meeting where we are offering continuing education credit for your attendance. Please be sure you sign in and out to receive that credit. If you have any questions, Stephanie, Christine, or Katie can help you. Finally, I would like to take a moment to recognize two of our board members who are attending their last meeting after over a decade of serving the board. First, Mary Ellen Early. Mary Ellen, we present you with the certificate as a small token of our appreciation for your selfless service as a public member who has always demonstrated an earnest commitment to our mandate of consumer protection. Mary Ellen was appointed to the board in April 2013 by Governor Brown, was reappointed by him in 2015, and reappointed again in 2019 by Governor Newsom. She has served a total of 11 years. Throughout the time, Mary Ellen has been an exemplary member, always giving critical thought to every proposal and every disciplinary matter, and always raising thoughtful questions of perspective from a consumer advantage. Her commitment to consumer protection has been unyielding, and California consumers have been well represented. Mary Ellen, on behalf of some 39 million California residents, I thank you, and we will miss you. Thank you for your service.
My pleasure.
Yes.
I want to get broken on the ride back.
Excellent. All right. I'll stand up for the second one. Now we turn to Mark Goldstein, RCP license number 12. Mark, we also present you with the certificate of appreciation for your service as a professional member who has always demonstrated his commitment to the profession and consumers by pursuing high standards and at the same time accessibility to health care for all consumers. Mark was appointed to the board in June 2012 by Governor Brown and was also reappointed 2 additional times thereafter. At the end of his term in May, he will have served just a week shy of 12 years. Many people don't know this, but Mark is the reason respiratory care professionals have licensure today. Back in the early 1980s, when Mark must have been 12, maybe a little older, he cared for a newborn and saved its life. That newborn was the son of a newly established lobbyist. Mark developed a relationship with him and was able to educate him about the profession, which in turn, the lobbyist insisted that this wonderful life-saving profession surely deserves and needs professional licensure. In 1982, the board was established, and the rest is history, as they say. Mark, California consumers have been better served by your dedication and advocacy for higher standards in education, scope of practice, and professionalism throughout the respiratory care industry. Additionally, there are about 47,000 people who are or were licensed as a respiratory care practitioner that thank you for your contributions to establishing licensure and supporting its growth. Mark, thank you for your service. You will be missed. Having completed my opening remarks, are there any comments or questions from members?
There are no, I don't know if there's any comments from the public, but I do have a comment. I would like to introduce a couple of people we have here in the audience today. We're going to be representing regulations later this week, but we have a division of regulation attorneys that help us with our regulations now. And we have our supervisor, our deputy director, Grace Rodriguez, and Dow Choi is here with us. She is going to be our attorney. We met the other day on a conference call, and we had a great conversation. Looking forward to working with both of you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you too for both of you for your. I won't get to work with you, but that's the legacy.
Thank you.
And one more person. I'm just going to go ahead and introduce Melissa Gear in the back. She works with our executive office, and we talk every time we have a board meeting. We're talking a couple weeks before each board meeting. And she represents our executive office well.
Thank you and welcome. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make a public comment? Yes.
Hi, everybody. I'm Naomi from UC Davis Medical Center. I'm RT, Naomi Bugayong. I was curious if there was a way for those who are joining on WebEx to sign in currently.
I don't believe that this is on WebEx. I think there's a webcast of it, which doesn't allow for participation through the webcast, only observing the meeting.
Okay.
I
there's
think
some,
any
couple people
participation
on
has to be in person here.
there. Okay. Thank
Sorry.
you.
Thank you for asking the question. Any other public comment? All right, public comment closed. All right, moving on. Agenda item number 2 includes an attachment of the board's October 24th, 2023 meeting minutes. Members, do you have any additions or corrections?
I have one correction on page 11, I believe line 32. The second sentence reads, "It wouldn't need to be a physician." It should say it would need to come from a physician, and it probably shouldn't be a full sentence since it's only a fragment. So that should probably be a comma in front of it.
Any other additions, corrections from the board? Okay, hearing none, may I have a motion to approve these as submitted or corrected?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Would anybody like to make a public comment? Okay, hearing none. Katie, will you please perform the roll call vote?
Mary Ellen Early,
Aye.
Mark Goldstein. Dr. Maheta.
Aye.
Michael Terry,
Aye.
and Vice President Hernandez.
Aye. Thank you, Katie. Now we'll turn it over to Stephanie to introduce agenda item number 3.
I will turn it over to Christine to present the rest of item 3. Sorry about that, Ray. Christine's doing our legislation now, and so she actually prepared this report and has her report to give.
All right, I'll turn it
Morning
over to
again,
Christine.
everyone. Good morning again. As you know, your meeting materials include updates regarding 2024 legislation of interest. We had 3 bills for which the board previously adopted positions, and those had been identified as potentially becoming 2-year bills. So I just want to provide you an update on those. The first is AB 477, Legislative Review of State Boards. There was no action taken on the bill earlier this year. It never made it out of the House of Origin by the legislative deadlines, and so that bill is now officially dead. AB 996, which the board took a watch position on last year, had to do with a conflict of interest policy. Although the board took a watch position, there was some pretty extensive discussion, and this was a bill that we sent a letter on. Although we didn't necessarily oppose it, we did express some concerns with the implications, feeling that it sent an unfair message that a provider with a financial interest is somehow less ethical. And so I actually saw an analysis where that was pointed out, the information that we submitted. And so though the bill doesn't appear to be moving, there is still potential for it. So it's not officially dead. We're continuing to monitor it in the event that it progresses forward this year. Similar to AB 996, SB 802, entitled Licensing Boards Disqualification from Licensure, that requires a board to notify an applicant within 30 days if they decide to deny their application for licensure. I believe this is something that we do, that we already do, but for whatever reason, they were looking to codify this in legislation. At this point, though, this bill appears to be dead, but we will also continue to monitor it in the event it progresses. Now, with regard to the legislation that's been introduced this calendar year, I wanted to provide a summary, including a staff recommended position. The first relates to AB 1891, Community Colleges and Allied Health Programs. We are recommending a watch position. The bill expands the use of multi-criteria screening and subsequent reporting requirements on the effectiveness of the process to impacted allied health programs offered by the California community colleges. The way that I read this, I have to tell you, I was slightly confused, and I'm hoping, Ray, that you might even be able to shed some light, but it sounds like when a program has reached capacity, there are different mechanisms put into place to continue to accept students, and this is going to provide another avenue that allows for additional students to be accepted. So we do have a watch position on that, and I don't know, Ray, if there's something you might be able to add.
I would just add on this one, at least this is speaking directly to the community college programs, not the private programs. And for the community college system, there is open access. And so when a program is impacted, such as healthcare programs are, meaning they get more applications than the number of spots, there's legislation to allow a process that is inclusive as opposed to exclusive. So the way I read this was current language, being that I work in the community college system, is that there are very few metrics in which to evaluate and prioritize a student for entry past meeting the prerequisite status or any basic status for an application. So how I read this was they're now going to start allowing other metrics such as GPA, and they list a whole
Correct.
slew of
Right.
those things. So,
Right.
so that's really the change. So it doesn't change the number of applicants. It doesn't change how many are accepted. COARC actually mandates that, which is the external accrediting agency. So that's just how I read it.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Thank
So-
you for,
And the only other piece that I would add to that is just that, the legislation was always intended to be inclusive as opposed to exclusive. So by now having these metrics, it's now going to be that balance of getting qualified applicants who are going to come through the profession and be competent, and excluding certain people. So that's always the balance that legislature comes through.
excellent, thank you. The next bill is AB 2269 that deals with board membership qualifications. And the bill would prohibit a public member or a lay member of the board from having a specified relationship with the licensee of that board for services provided to that license within 3 years of the public member or lay member's appointment. It would also state that these requirements apply to a public member appointed or reappointed after January 1, 2025. The next bill is AB 2862, sponsored by Assemblyman Gibson, and it is entitled Licensees, African American Applicants. You'll see that we have, at this point, recommended an oppose unless amended, and I will weigh in on that a bit more. The bill would require, notwithstanding any other law, that a board within the department prioritize African American applicants seeking licensure, especially applicants who are descended from a person enslaved in the United States. Now, at this point, staff has recommended the oppose unless amended position due to the anticipated fiscal impact it will impose. Whenever there's a bill that impacts a health board, we are asked by the budget office to weigh in. And in doing so, we estimated that it would, as written, provide a cost of about just under $250,000. As written, the bill doesn't include information regarding plans for implementation, so our fiscal analysis is based on assumptions as to how we will authenticate applicants to whom the provisions apply. Conducting this type of research will very likely be time-consuming and will require significant resources. At a minimum, we believe it would require the establishment of 2 analyst-level positions dedicated to conducting the research. Moreover, there would have to be a process change put in place for impacted applicants to pre-apply, we believe, well in advance of graduation to avoid lengthy delays, which would be anticipated as part of the research time, which is really a direct conflict with what the bill is attempting to achieve. If the board is in agreement with the staff recommended position, we can craft a letter expressing our concerns and offering some potential alternatives for confirming an applicant meets the specified criteria. The next bill is AB 3127. This probably looks familiar to you. It was AB 1028 last year. The board took an opposed position on it. It mirrors that bill. And it removes the requirement that a healthcare practitioner make a report to law enforcement when they suspect a patient has suffered a physical injury caused by assaultive or abusive conduct, except in specific circumstances. Health practitioners in such cases would instead be required to provide brief counseling and a referral to local and national domestic violence or sexual violence advocacy services. So we have a staff recommended position of oppose, as we did with AB 1028 last year. Next, we have SB 1067, Healing Arts Expedited Licensure, Medically Underserved Area or Population. This bill would require a board essentially to expedite the application process for an applicant who provides or demonstrates that they will be practicing in a medically underserved area or serve a medically underserved population. I just wanted to point out the difference between this bill and AB 2862 is that the documentation is to support the expedited licensure is the responsibility of the applicant and doesn't require staff resources to confirm eligibility for the special handling. So although they're both looking for expedite for particular areas, I mean Senator Smallwood Cuevas, included that information in the version of the bill as written. So we already have an idea of how that would be implemented. And then finally, we have SB 1451, which is the board-sponsored legislation to carve out the additional exemption, authorizing LVNs with specified training to perform tasks beyond basic respiratory in the home and community-based settings. The bill also extends the employer training provision from 1/1/2025 to 2028, while the board works to promulgate the official training guidelines. We are hopeful this legislation puts into place the final piece of this decades-long issue, and we are recommending a support position on that.
Thank you, Christine. What we'll do now is we'll address each legislative bill one by one for motions, discussions, and public comment. Starting with regarding the two-year bills, AB 477, AB 996, and SB 802, they are now dead. I will ask the board if they have any comments. Does the public have any comments on these three bills? Okay. We'll now review bills introduced in 2024 to determine the board's position on each. We'll start with AB 1891 concerning capacity of allied health programs at community colleges. Staff recommend to a watch position on this bill. Can I get a motion for a position on this bill?
I move that we support the staff
Okay.
position.
It's been moved. Can I get
I'll second.
and I have a second. All right, discussion with the board? So the only thing I would reiterate, hearing none, is just again, the previous language in legislation has always been to allow full access. And so, the intent again is oftentimes when you have more exclusionary criteria, we don't allow people who normally don't get into these programs with that, right? But again, I do understand now being on the board as well that if we're looking to protect and serve the public, then that's a positive thing. So, I would just put as we're watching just the balance of that so that we do allow full access, we support full access, maintaining high quality. Would anyone like to make public comment on this bill? Okay, hearing none. Katie, please take a vote by roll call.
Mary Ellen Early.
Aye.
Mark Goldstein.
Aye.
Dr. Maheta. Michael Terry.
Aye.
And Vice President Hernandez.
Aye. AB 2269 concerning the qualifications of public members appointed to serve on boards. Staff recommend watch position on this bill. Can I get a motion for a position on this bill?
I move that we support the staff position.
I have a motion. Can I get a second? And I have a second. Discussion by the board? Hearing no discussion, would anyone like to make a public comment on this bill? All right, hearing no public comment, Katie, please take a vote by roll call.
Mary Ellen Early.
Aye.
Mark Goldstein.
Aye.
Dr. Maheta.
Aye.
Michael Terry.
Aye.
And Vice President Hernandez.
Aye. AB 2862 concerning prioritizing applications from African American applicants. Staff recommend oppose unless amended position on this bill. Can I get a motion for a position on this bill?
Make a motion to support the staff recommendation.
All right, we have a motion. Can I get a second? Second. All right, we have a second. Board discussion? Hearing none, would anyone like to make a public comment on this bill? Hearing none, Katie, please take a vote by roll call.
Mary Ellen Early,
Aye.
Mark Goldstein,
Aye.
Dr. Maheta,
Aye.
Michael Terry,
Aye.
and Vice President Hernandez.
Aye. Moving on to AB 3127 concerning the removal of the requirement for health practitioners to report suspected assault or torture of patients. Staff recommend an opposed position on this bill. Can I get a motion for a position on this bill?
Motion that we oppose this bill.
Motion has been received. A second? And a second. Discussion by the board?
I think that there's so many expectations.
Can you turn on your microphone, please?
There are so many expectations from healthcare professionals, and we are, held to a higher moral standing than everybody else, and this can weigh on our profession, especially the part which says it's punishable as a misdemeanor. I think those are the words that really stood out at me in this bill, and hence I support opposing it.
Thank you. Any other board comments? Would anyone like to make a public comment on this bill? Hearing none, Katie, please take a vote by roll call.
Mary Ellen Early,
Aye.
Mark Goldstein,
Aye.
Dr. Maheta, Michael Terry,
Aye.
and Vice President Hernandez.
Aye. SB 1067 concerning expediting applications of health practitioners who intend to serve in medically underserved areas in addition to those intending to provide abortions. Staff recommends a watch position on the bill. Can I get a motion for a position on this bill?
Support the staff position on this bill.
I have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Received a second. Discussion with the board? Hearing none, would anyone like to make a public comment on this bill? Okay. Hearing none, Katie, please take a vote by roll call.
Mary Ellen Early,
Aye.
Mark Goldstein,
Aye.
Dr. Maheta,
Aye.
Michael Terry,
Aye.
and Vice President Hernandez.
Aye. Finally, SB 1451, sponsored by our board, proposing to establish additional pathways for LVNs who are trained to provide respiratory care beyond basic tasks at specific home and community-based settings. Staff recommend support position on this bill. Can I get a motion for a position on this bill?
I move that we support this bill.
I have a motion. Can I get a second? I have a second. Discussion with the board. Would anyone like to make a public comment on this bill? Hearing none, Katie, please take a vote by roll call.
Mary Ellen Early,
Aye.
Mark Goldstein,
Aye.
Dr. Maheta,
Aye.
Michael Terry,
Aye.
and Vice President Hernandez.
Aye. All right, we made it through the legislation of interest. Thank you, Christina, for your presentation. Now, Stephanie, will you please introduce item number 4?
Thank you. Before you, we have item 4. It's the proposed regulatory language to identify basic respiratory care tasks presented to you for your approval and motion to proceed with the rulemaking process. As noted in the cover, this language was previously approved and began the rulemaking process in 2022, but due to unrelated opposition, the board withdrew the regulations last June as an act of good faith. At this time, I think it is incumbent upon the board to move forward with the implementation of SB 1436 by providing clarity on what constitutes a basic respiratory task. Are there any members willing to start the discussion by making the motion as outlined on the first page of the attachment 4?
I will make a motion. I move that the board approve the proposed regulatory text for section 1399.365 as presented. Direct staff to submit the text to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and to the Business, Consumer Services, and Housing Agency for review. And if no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to take all necessary steps to initiate the rulemaking process, make any non-substantive changes to the package, and set the matter for a hearing. If no adverse comments are received during the 45-day comment period or during the public hearing if requested, authorize the executive officer to take all necessary steps to complete the rulemaking and adopt the proposed regulations at section 1399.365 of Title 16, California Code of Regulations as noticed.
Thank you, Michael. Can we get a second?
Second.
All right, we have a second. Do members have any questions or comments? All right, hearing none, would anyone like to make a public comment on this bill? All right, hearing none. We have a motion and a second. Katie, please take a vote by roll call.
Mary Ellen Early,
Aye.
Mark Goldstein. Dr. Maheta,
Aye.
Michael Terry,
Aye.
and Vice President Hernandez.
Aye. Thank you, Stephanie. Appreciate it. All right, now I'm going to turn it over back to me, the Professional Qualifications Committee Chair. And we're going to have an update regarding our Respiratory Care Board Strategic Plan Goals 2.3 and 2.4. So we have a couple of agenda items that we're looking at, and the first one is a draft 2024 workforce survey for review today. And before we get into that, I just want to give us a review of just where this subcommittee has been and how we got here today. So just in looking back, this has been a 2-year process from last strategic plan where the strategic goal was to actually look at the incorporation of a bachelor's degree. And that was since modified to really look at educational requirements and modify as necessary. And so over the last 2 years, the subcommittee has presented a series of board study sessions. In those board study sessions, we looked at a historical perspective of this profession. We looked at current landscape and recommendations and practice. With that, we offered a couple of case studies, and those case studies were from nursing and physical therapy. And then just more recently, at the end of last year, we conducted focus groups and provided those recommendations from all of that information. And I want to remind the board and the audience, give me a second here, to those recommendations just following the focus groups. And there were about 6 recommendations that our subcommittee, myself and Michael Terry, came up with. One was to identify and conduct follow-up strategies for receiving more perspectives, and that came out of discussions and public comments. We're looking also at exploring and reviewing possible models for addressing the strategic plan. So when we talk about today's survey, you'll note that some of the models that have bubbled up have been included in the survey. Identify a bachelor's degree education structure that prepares RC graduates to provide competent, safe care. That is not a priority at this time. However, it is part of the recommendations, being that we're still in more the exploratory phase, gathering information. Explore sponsorship for study focused on RCP education, training, and patient safety. So we've been talking about how changes might affect patient safety, and we haven't garnered enough information in that respect. Promote increased number of California bachelor's degree programs. And so last year, the executive office, on behalf of President Guzman, sent out a letter to all COARC accredited entry-level programs, really supporting movement towards more access to bachelor's degrees in the state of California. And then the last bullet point is identify a reasonable, comprehensive plan and timeline. And again, that one's on the back burner until we continue and finish the information gathering for any more recommendations. So with that said, I want to turn it over to my colleague, Michael Terry, who's going to be talking about the identification of this workforce study and where things are moving forward. Michael?
Thank you, Ray. Basically, what we're trying to do is extend the fact-finding mission out into the community, not to just a selected group like a focus groups that we did. So now we're going to have unsolicited responses, I hope, by posting a Qualtrics survey through the RCB's board, or through the board's website, and solicit the public's comments as well as the profession's comments. I sent the link out to all of the board members and would be very, very happy to receive feedback from anyone who's had a chance to go through the survey, and if there's any comments or questions they have about the information there or the methodology, I'd be happy to address that.
Board members, any comments, discussion?
All righty.
I just had a couple of questions. Actually, this is, I just wanted to confirm that this is the.
Turn on your mic, please.
It is on. This is the survey we filled out, which was also sent out by email, correct, Stephanie? And so I think the plan is to receive this survey by the 31st of May, and then compile all of the information that's received on that survey. And how are we, how are we using that information? Does it come back to us, or who is going over that? And what's the timeline for us to act on that information?
Since I'm not certain that this is the final form of the survey, I couldn't really give you a timeline for when it will begin. But our hope is that by the next board meeting, the survey will have been completed for a period of about 3 months. And that from that point, we'd close the survey, and Ray and I will begin analyzing the data. And then by October, we'd come back to the board with the findings.
Just to piggyback on that, nowhere in this survey did I see any request or proposal for a better compensation for respiratory therapists after this, this requirement for additional education and bachelor's degree, et cetera, is made. Is that a consideration as well? Has that proposal been made or supported at all?
From the board's perspective, I don't think that we make a recommendation on compensation for respiratory therapists. So I didn't include that as part of the scope of this particular project.
Yeah, because something I feel strongly about is if we are pushing for, more training and more education, I just feel like, we do live in a state which has a very high standard of living. And so when you're pushing for these young healthcare aspirational, members to, get more education, like how are we ensuring that they will be protected by a high remuneration once they come out of this with loans and whatnot. So I really feel strongly about that, and I wish there was a way for us to also advocate for that while we are pushing for consumer safety, so we attract the best of the best and keep them within our community to serve our community.
I think what I would add to that is the information that we've been garnering hasn't included compensation. And I think from a board perspective, that's not where our influence is. While it is a consideration, I'm a practicing therapist, I think that that's valid. We haven't asked that question throughout, and the survey has been mirrored on the focus group questions that we had as well. Just kind of looking at Reza, just in terms of, conversations about, compensation, surveys and from boards, how useful would a question surrounding that be, and can it be asked?
So I think a couple areas I'll touch on. First of all, I think as far as the information you can solicit with the survey, there may be some room to include compensation-related questions and things like that. But as far as the, I'll kind of piggyback off what you said, Ray. I think as far as the scope of this board, I'd consider it to be pretty limited with regard to compensation for licensees. And, like Ray said, it's an important topic, and as you kind of phrased your comment, it could conceivably tie into public protection, but don't forget that is the paramount priority of the board is public protection and compensation typically, and it's not just this board and these regulatory boards, but in general across state government. There's exceptions, but for the most part, and I'm sorry, not even state government, across government generally. With exceptions, the government is generally kind of outside of the realm of setting compensation and getting itself involved in, market forces that ultimately determine compensation. So I don't think that it's necessarily entirely outside of this board's concern or a realm of concerns or even jurisdiction, but I think it would, it would have to be couched in the terms of how it affects public safety, and I think compensation would probably have to get to a pretty severe level for this board to kind of insert itself into that set of factors and forces. Again, not that it's an insignificant issue, but I think that's something that the professional associations are kind of better in a better position to advocate on that front. So I hope that helped, and let me know if there's
Thank you
further
for that
questions.
feedback. So Michael will be taking just the feedback here and then just seeing what could come out of that. But thank you for that comment.
Yeah, thank you all.
I'd like to say that we could add a question asking of the people who are taking the questions, would they expect a change in compensation if one of the scenarios was enacted? So we could add that to each scenario just to see what their expectations might be. So if you think that would be appropriate, I would be more than happy to add that to each of the scenarios.
I mean, anecdotally, when you asked the question, I already kind of thought about it in the survey, and I already know what the answer would be. I've talked qualitatively to so many practitioners. So I think we're going to know the answer, but I think presenting a question tied in more of a neutral way to the changes might be good.
Yeah, and only because people are trying to answer these surveys as honestly as possible, and I'm sure it's at the back of the licensees' minds. I mean, what am I going to get out of this? After all of that time and energy spent on getting a higher bachelor's degree and whatnot. So I feel like that's important. And one of the biggest issues we're facing in the medical field is the high cost of living, which is not attracting people to live in high-cost areas because there just seems to be a cap on compensation, and this is directly going to affect people that live in that area. We're seeing that, I mean, I can speak for, MDs. We're not having new graduates, move to, areas with big hospital systems just because they just cannot afford to live within a 15-minute, 30-minute radius. They're driving an hour away just to come to work, and everyone knows that we work long hours and odd hours. So I want to bring that up and, make sure that we're aware as we're passing on these surveys and upkeeping the high quality of service that we provide, that we also sort of take care of our licensees and make sure that they know that we're thinking about them while we're setting these high standards for consumer protection.
Thank you. And as I think about your question, I think about legislation already. So, from a state level, the legislators have already seen that access to a baccalaureate degree and the cost of a baccalaureate degree has been a consideration. So reducing that cost by making it more accessible at the community college level. And in the public system, most districts are providing free college for people who live in those counties. So I think the question as you kind of posed it in draft format it's just a good one, I think, overall.
Okay. We'll add that to the survey. The other question I had is if anyone on the board had any other scenarios that we didn't include that they would like us to entertain on the survey.
Now, Michael, you've had some feedback since we've been working in our subcommittee. Was there another scenario that was not on the draft survey?
Yeah, one of the working groups that I'm developed a survey with at my university came up with a different scenario where it would be a three-tiered educational scenario for respiratory therapists, with one tier being respiratory care assistants, the second would be respiratory care practitioners, and the third tier would be APRT. And so they wanted me to try to see if I could include that as a potential model for the future.
Well, that's one of the models that bubbled up through physical therapy.
Yeah.
So we did present that case study, and it seems to align with just kind of the format that they have.
I agree. Actually, that's similar to what we have, in many clinical scenarios, and that seems appropriate because there are certain tasks that can be performed at a very basic level with oversight, and that there are there are so many upcoming therapies in respiratory care where an MD almost needs an RT hand in hand in the for example in the ICU. And so I agree that tier system, I support that and be very beneficial.
So I'd like to ask from the board, would they like to revisit approval of the survey, or would they consider these to be non-substantial changes that we could go ahead and publish with just the executive office's approval?
But before we go to that, might we ask for public comment and then you
Yes,
raise that
I'm-
question
thank you very
again?
much, yes.
So just one last request of the board, if you have any questions or comments about the draft survey. Okay. Hearing none, is there any public comment? Okay. No public comment. I'll refer it back to you, Michael.
Okay, so would it be okay for us to have the executive office approve the changes in the survey rather than having to wait for another respiratory care board before we publish the survey?
I think that's a great idea.
And so, let me just see. So I've got, it's a great idea, but I think we'd want to
We'll
formulate
need
that
a
into a
motion.
motion.
We
Yeah.
need a motion for that.
I'll make a motion to the executive office to make modifications as necessary to questionnaire survey.
And then proceed with publishing it soon thereafter and have it open till May 31st, 2024?
Let's not set a date.
Okay,
Just let you set the date.
okay, so leave that open, but essentially be able to publish it thereafter. Okay? So I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second, any discussion from the board? Hearing none, any public comment? All right, hearing no public comment. Katie, can we take a roll call?
Mary Ellen Early,
Aye.
Mark Goldstein, Dr. Maheta,
Aye.
Michael Cherry,
Aye.
Vice President Hernandez,
Aye.
and President Guzman.
Aye.
All right, thank you. So thank you, Michael. And we look forward then to moving forward with that next information gathering. Welcome, President Guzman.
Thank you.
President Guzman has asked me to stay on track here and continue with the meeting. So agreed to do that.
Thank you, Ray.
You're welcome. All right, we're on to agenda item number 6, proposed meeting date for Wednesday, March 12th, 2025. So this is looking ahead in Temecula and concurrent with the California Society for Respiratory Care, CSRC, annual meeting. The California Society for Respiratory Care has moved their annual conference from May, June each year to March. Normally, we schedule all of our board meetings at the last meeting of the year, but last year we found that many of us had already booked dates in our calendars for the early part of the following year. As you know, the attendance at our board meetings that are held concurrently with CSRC's annual event yield the most attendance. It is one of the best ways to reach out to our stakeholders. As you may recall, at our last strategic planning session, there was a running theme throughout many of our goals that included connecting with our stakeholders to obtain feedback. With that said, I would like to know if members would be in favor of scheduling our first meeting of 2025 for Wednesday, March 12th, 2025 in Temecula, California, in connection with CSRC's annual event, barring any budget restrictions. Okay. We don't need a motion, but just
I'd
any
like to ask a
comment?
question. Yeah, normally we have the board meeting with CSRC on a Thursday because that's the ending date of their conference. They end usually at 12, and we have the meeting subsequently. Is there a reason we chose Wednesday instead of Thursday for this?
We chose Wednesday because the president told me that was the last day of their conference. Oh, Naomi, do you happen to know? I mean, I can look for the email now because I would like to verify it, but there was reasoning behind it.
But it still sounds like it's following the same format. Conference ends by 12 noon. We would have the meeting right after, but it sounds like it's ending on a Wednesday rather than a Thursday.
Yeah, last week the meeting ended on Thursday.
I don't know if their conference is still going to end at noon. I just know I contacted her
Got it.
for the best day, and she's.
Well, can we agree to have it on that Thursday once we know, or Wednesday, whatever day it is? Is that okay? For that week?
Well, whatever works for the CSRC, I think, overall, and they usually schedule it when none of the CEU offerings are happening.
Yeah, they have scheduled me for something that day.
Yeah, that's why you know.
That's why I know.
So at this time, I would like to just move ahead with the date. I will go ahead and make sure,
Okay.
and I'll follow up either way with all of you to confirm the date, but I don't have any reason to believe it's wrong at this
Understood.
point.
And again, we're just trying to do this proactively before we all make our
Before we make our
plans
plans,
for
yes.
next year.
Right, we still need to go forward with an exemption request because of the budget restriction. So we'll get that in, and by October, we should have an approval or not approval. And, so Christine found the email, and it's confirmed. Crystal wanted us there on March 12th. Is that, March 12th.
It's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it looks like.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
so
they
it's running
changed
from
that.
March 10th to March 12th.
So I think it still follows the same format, just
Okay, just a different
the
day. Okay,
dates, start and end date are different for the week.
it's interesting.
All right, are we hearing from the board that, yes, move forward with confirming, and we know our date of, at least for our spring meeting, for March 12th in Temecula, as long as there are no budgetary
Yeah.
constraints? Okay, and you'll get back, the
Yes,
executive
we should know for
office will
sure
get back to us.
in October.
All right, well, thank you. We'll get those dates up on our website once all that's confirmed. All right, thank you. All right, agenda item number 7, public comment on items not on the agenda. Please note that the board is unable to take action on any items not listed on the agenda. The only action the board may take is to decide whether to place an item on a future agenda. Is there anyone who would like to make a public comment on anything that is not on the agenda? All right, no public comment. Okay, we'll move on to item number 8, future agenda items. Members, do you have any specific item you would like to see on our next agenda?
I'd like to see a spot for the Professional Qualifications Committee to report preliminary results from the survey.
Okay. Any other future agenda items from the board?
Won't be here at the next meeting, but
You turn on your microphone, please.
I would like to see a further discussion of the ability of members of the profession, certain members, to be able to prescribe. I think this is an issue that I know we're going about it with education, but I have a feeling that this is a timely manner that that needs to be addressed as to fulfill our role as a physician extender. It's something that needs to be looked at a little bit closer and quicker. That's it.
And this would be inclusive of APRT or outside of APRT discussion that we're having?
Outside of APRT.
All right, any other future agenda items from the board? Hearing none, is there anyone that would like to make a public comment on future agenda items? All right,
I had a question on the prescriber outside of the APRT. Are future agenda items, are these something that if it's mentioned here, it needs to go on an agenda, or does it require board approval? How does that work?
I don't know that you, excuse me, need a motion necessarily, or board approval. Some boards have like a charter or something that lays it out as far as how to get items added to the agenda. But unless there's any board discussion about including that or not including it, I think it can be worked out offline if there's any issue with including it. For example, if you want to postpone it or something like that, you would talk to
Okay.
the board member
Yeah, I'm
offline.
just wondering, just want to make sure that it, while I understand it's been an issue and it's been kind of discussed for a while, I don't know if it might be better served at a strategic planning session. I just wanted to know the rules, so you had the rules, so you knew how to address it.
Yeah, and I would just say, based on just your, your interpretation, I think Michael and I on the Professional Qualifications Committee might have a discussion, because we are just kind of talking about pathways. And so maybe in that discussion, we could bring up an agenda item. So maybe if we leave it like that, or Mark, does that sound okay? We'll take it into a subcommittee and then somehow bring it to a future agenda item, just really based on the strategic plan, all the conversations that are taking place. Sounds good. Okay. All right, so I was asking for public comment on future agenda items. We didn't hear any. Okay. With that said, I realized that I do need to go back to agenda item number 5. We did just half of the professional qualifications. I realized we didn't do the second half. Is it fine just to go back, or do I need to make a motion? All right, so we're going back to agenda item number 5B, AB 927, statute 2021 for community college statewide baccalaureate degree programs, process, impact on respiratory education program. So really this fits in with A in terms of the workforce study, because one of the recommendations we made were really to build capacity and access of baccalaureate education here in the state of California. And one of the things I did in preparation today was just look at where we are on the landscape. And so I think the board will be, I think this information is really beneficial for the board to know, and certainly the public as we look at this. So I went to COARC's website, which accredits all of programs throughout the nation, and I took an inventory of all COARC accredited programs here in California. We have 38 entry into practice respiratory care programs that are sanctioned by COARC. Of those 38, which, as I disaggregated the types that we have 19 associate degree programs that are situated in the community college system, which are public programs. And when we look at the legislation for baccalaureate degrees, it directly affects those 19 out of the 38. So really only half are subject to utilizing this pathway. The other 19 are private schools, and included in that is Loma Linda, which has the only baccalaureate entry into practice program in the state of California. The other programs are either associate, and the reason why I'm disaggregating these two, because it is important in plans and timelines of whatever we do, so it's important that the board really understand the difference, that when we look at the private schools, they have 2 types of associate degrees. And of those 18, 12 of them have an Associate of Science, just like all the community colleges do. And what that means is they have an expanded general education pattern. So those programs actually have more units involved. And when we were looking at the quality of therapists that we want to see for providing safe and effective care for citizens of California, we have talked about communication and critical thinking. So, it doesn't guarantee, but the more education in these realms, the more likely you're able to get a qualified practitioner that can communicate and critically think, okay? And 6 of those private programs are an Associate of Occupational Studies, which has less general ed connected with them, okay? And so I think it's just important for you to understand that as we start having more discussions about what would a realized further education look like. So that's the landscape of what we have in entry into practice, we have one bachelor's of entry into practice. Now, when we go to the community colleges, and the community colleges, we've advocated for all programs, private and public, but the community colleges now can leverage the legislation which allows them to advocate for a baccalaureate degree. Currently, the baccalaureate degrees are a +2. It's not an entry into practice. They finish their associate degree, and then they move on to the second 2 years. However, what we know in an associate degree, it's actually 3 years, and then they do more education to get their bachelor's. So for most of these, because it's a 2+2, it's really a 5-year pathway, which is an issue overall and why we would like, if we institute more educational requirements, an entry into practice bachelor's would streamline that. And while it's more education, that more education would be maybe only a year if that's what ends up being in a baccalaureate. So it's important for us to know that piece, okay? Here was the nice surprising piece that I found. So when I looked at the California Community College State Chancellor's website to see baccalaureate approval, they offer 2 application periods, one in February, one in August. They've done now, I think, about 4 cycles. And of the 19 community colleges that could apply, 9 have been approved for a baccalaureate. So that's almost half. You know, I remember last year a comment from the public about, hey, you know, we only have 3. So it's not a quick process, but that process is moving forward. So I'm really happy that the board has taken a position to reach out and advocate, because I think we're seeing those results to provide education to California practitioners, which is excellent. Having said all that, the one piece, because I do work in the community college system, that I just wanted to relay to folks is there's a tension happening right now. And that tension is because it's not required to have a bachelor's degree, preferred in the community, in the healthcare community, but not required. There's a tension between building capacity in the community college system and the demand. And so we're already starting to see in the process an associate degree program at the community college level can apply. And what we found so far is all of them, any approval, any application has been approved at the state level. But there's one more piece that has to happen when a community college in a service area applies for a baccalaureate degree. They need to regionally contact any other program that it might impact. And so now what we're seeing is we have, of the 9, 5 approved baccalaureates are in Southern California and 4 are in Northern California. So now we're starting to see a competition for those students who are opting to get a bachelor's degree, and so enrollment is being impacted the more programs that are being approved. So I just wanted the board to be aware that we just have this tension. It's a growing tension. Competition's always good, yes, but it's a growing tension. So our work that we're doing is even becoming more important should educational requirements change. Making a decision can be helpful in the process. Okay. So that's the feedback I wanted to give you. Does the board have any questions or comments based on that information?
I just wanted to make a comment. I was pretty excited the other day, and I shared with Stephanie that just watching our local NBC channel here in Sacramento, and it probably now makes sense coming off of the February application, but they made notice that Antelope Valley in Lancaster and Victor Valley in Victorville, they actually provided that information on the news of several community college programs that had been approved for the baccalaureate level and listed respiratory care, those 2 particular ones. So it was just kind of exciting to see it reaching the public that way.
Yeah, that's nice. And based on who you've said, let me tell the list to the group. So in Southern California, Antelope Valley, Crafton Hills has already started their program as of January. Los Angeles College, I don't know if they've started their program. Victor Valley also was just recently approved. Those are all in Southern California. In Northern California, both Modesto and Skyline started with the pilots about 3, 4, 5 years ago.
5 years.
And then recently Foothill was approved and they're set to launch this fall. And then it looks like Hartnell College was just approved as well.
I know we've also provided a support letter for El Camino College, so I'm guessing they may be in the.
Oh, El Camino's on the list.
Oh, okay.
They were approved. I'm sorry if I missed that.
And I just had a quick question. Is there, I mean, do these colleges have a pipeline for jobs? I mean, are they tied into a hospital or university setting? So we know that these graduates, are securing,
So the model is the baccalaureates are not an entry into practice.
Okay.
Right? So these are people that have already gone through an associate entry into practice program. Now they're furthering their education. And many of them, I would say now, are moving from finishing the entry into practice and possibly going straight into a baccalaureate degree program. Many of them are already employed in industry and now getting theirs. So the pathway is inherent in the entry into practice.
Okay.
And I would just say, one of the hesitations, I think, for our practitioners is the pathway is longer than it should be because it's a 2+2 model.
Right. Not straight out.
All right, any other final comments, questions from the board? Okay. I'll put the question out to the public for any comment on that report. All right, hearing none. We're on to agenda item number 2, which is closed session. We have no items for closed session, so this meeting will now be adjourned.